Welcome to Great Books, Big Ideas. I'm Jim. Thanks for joining me. I want to talk to you today about a criticism that's often been leveled at the Britannica Great Books of the Western world. Many feel that these volumes, although they appear handsome on the shelf, aren't so easy to read. And we're not talking about the contents, which, let's face it, can be pretty tough going in and of themselves. No, we're talking about the look and feel, the format of the books, the paper, the margins, the typography. Critics have lambasted this set for its minuscule type. Most volumes are set in double columns with small margins and what appears to be maybe 8-point type, possibly 10-point. I don't think any higher than that. You're probably going to benefit from a pair of reading glasses and a good lighting source if you want to get very far through the Great Books of the Western World set. Now, writers like Alex Beam, in A Great Idea at the Time, a book I reviewed many videos ago, they whine about the typography endlessly. It's a source of ridicule. The accusation goes like this: "You moron, you bought these books to dress up your library like cultural wallpaper, but the minute you try to actually read one, you'll squint yourself into a headache and give up fast. Ha ha ha." Now, before we all pile on in agreement, I'd like to offer an apologia for the typographical choices that were made in this book set. Ultimately, you'll have to decide for yourself whether the books are readable or not. But first, a word about the book designer. Britannica hired Rudolf Ruzicka to design the books. Ruzicka, who I think was originally from Bohemia, his years are 1883 to 1978. He was a Czech-American wood engraver, etcher, illustrator, typeface designer, and book designer. He designed typefaces and illustrations for Marymount Press. He worked for the Mergenthaler Linotype Company, where he designed typefaces such as Lake Informal, Ruzicka Freehand, Fairfield, and Primer. In 1935, Ruzicka was awarded the gold medal from the American Institute of Graphic Arts. Today, the art of Rudolf Ruzicka is included in the permanent collections of the Art Institute of Chicago, the Carnegie Institute, Library of Congress, and Brooklyn Institute of Arts and Sciences, Metropolitan Museum of Art, and others. So in other words, Rudolf Ruzicka was no slouch. Should we not grant him some benefit of the doubt before we slag his book designs? Well, let's look for ourselves. On to the document cam. Okay, let's have a look at this now. We have noticed the different color combinations on these volumes. These are the leatherette, almost like a naugahyde look here to these volumes. And these do not hold up very well with age. They crack along the edge here. So I don't, if you're looking to collect a Great Books of the Western World set, you might want to pursue another option for different covers. Like they have some cloth bound, they have some come in black. They're just check the condition before you commit to one of these. Some of you might just like the look of this brown, tan brown though. But anyway, we want to really look at what's inside the books. So I'm going to jump to one of the more typical layouts. The most common would be, here's a volume of Plutarch that I'm reading right now, and these were all typeset by Ruzicka. And there's your double column layout with your small point size. The font that he used was Fairfield. This is one of the typefaces that Ruzicka himself designed. There's your contents. So you've got, this is what it looks like. And here's the full page spread. And yeah, the text size is quite small, but you've got a nice double column layout. Its margins are a little wider on the outside as you would expect them to be. And you got some space up top and below, header footer space. But you can see these dense blocks of texts might be formidable to some people. But you can get a lot of text on the page when you lay out in double columns like this at a small point size. And as I said, I think this might be 8 or 9 point type, possibly 10. There's drop caps. And that's what a typical double column layout looks like. Let's turn to Aristotle. I'll show you sort of the same idea here. And it's going to be pretty slow going as you make your way through here. Another thing to notice is, okay, you've got this attractive spine, but you've got nothing really going on the front and back covers, which I find to be a bit of a disappointment. Even in like a World Book encyclopedia, for instance, and probably the Encyclopedia Britannica, like something's going to be shown here on the front cover, but here you just get this generic nothingness, blank slate, tabula rasa. So I think that's a wasted opportunity. They probably were trying to save some money by designing the books that way. But here's some literature, and this is prose translation of the Iliad, so it's just, again, the small columns, and you work your way through it. Turning to Shakespeare, let me show you what plays look like, how they're laid out. And here we have, again, the double column layout, and characters are indicated by italicized, indented text. And you can work your way through Shakespeare's plays that way. Now, not every volume is in double column. I would say probably about 80% of them are. But let me show you an example of a novel. This is Herman Melville's Moby Dick. Which now goes to a single column layout. And you see the type size is much larger, much easier on the eye. It looks like the page numbering is different too. And I think anyone would admit that this is a pretty readable point size. So some of the novels, especially the later novels in the set fiction, are going to be in this format. But most of them are going to be looking like this. Okay, now that we've had a look at some of these great books, let's try to answer the question whether they are readable or not. I think the answer is yes, with some caveats. There's no getting around the fact that the point size is very small, but I find that with a good pair of reading glasses, they pose very little trouble to my eyes, and I don't have the best eyes anymore. I actually really like the 2-column format. My eyes don't have to scan horizontally along the line. It's just a very narrow column width, so I can sort of move down the page, down the column pretty easily without fatigue. Now, it's true that reading small type in double columns means it takes quite some time, even just to make it to like another page turn. And this can result in feeling like you're not making very much progress through the books. the reading pace seems slowed down. You do not breeze through. But on the other hand, this pace maybe invites you to contemplate a little bit more what you're actually reading. So I find the slower pace is conducive to a more thoughtful comprehension of the texts. Now, if you like to annotate your books, be aware that there's hardly any space for marginalia. You just can't really accomplish it. You'd be better off making your annotations in a notebook. Yes, you could highlight if you wanted to, but other than that, I don't think it's going to work out too well. There's a little bit of space in the footer space, but other than that, not much. The paper is very thin. Yet another compromise. It's not as thin as a Holy Bible would be, but after all, they had quite a number of books to cram into these volumes, so they had to have thin paper. It was just basically a necessity. Otherwise, the shelves would have been like really, really wide. The paper quality, at least in these 1952 sets, this is a little bit later, like late 50s, but this sort of first edition of the books, I find it like nice into the touch. It's supple. I rather like the feel of it. I don't have any qualms about the paper. Sometimes you can see through a little bit to the other side. That might even be more of an issue with the 1990 second edition, but even that edition is fine. The 1990 volumes, the pages are very bright, very more of a white instead of this sort of cream color. These might have tanned a little bit with age, but I think they were always, to some extent, this tone. So that's my take on the design of the Great Books of the Western World set. It's not perfect, it's not ideal, but maybe it's the best compromise considering how many books you get for the amount of shelf space that you have to devote to these books. And it's definitely not the disaster that some would make it out to be. I rather like the typography. You just have to get used to that small point size and the double columns for most of the volumes. What do you think? Opinions are going to differ on this subject. You're welcome to weigh in the comments down below. I think it's going to be interesting. Some of you, this might be a deal breaker. You might say, my eyes can't take that. And if that's the case, you're going to have to look elsewhere for these kinds of books that are in the set. Others of you will like it, or you'll just be able to live with it. So anyway, let me know your thoughts, especially those of you who have attempted to read these books, these volumes, the set in the Great Books of the Western World, Britannica. Let me know what you think of it. And thanks for watching.